Good evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone. So I'd like to start off first by thanking Arganim, Rabbi, and anyone else who may be involved for organizing these shiurim for the benefit of the community. And I'd also like to thank those who are being mishtatef, who came in person from their homes to be mishtatef in this shiur, and those watching online as well. So before I begin the shiur, I want to take a minute to explain the title of the shiur. The title of the shiur was the fascinating Shailos of Shuvas, quoted by the Rebbe. So the concept here is that, my assumption here is that we don't need any extra encouragement to learn the Rebbe's Torah itself, either because we're all already learning it, or there are plenty of other people and causes out there that are being motivated to learn the Rebbe's Torah. But of course, there are many other sections of Torah, and some may even be a bit neglected. And besides the value those portions of Torah hold in their own right, but there's also the way it interacts and connects with what the Rebbe is actually saying. The Rebbe is interacting and building on information from other portions of Torah that you won't necessarily see straight up, outright in the Rebbe's words, and it holds some very significant background to understand what the Rebbe is saying. So if you're not familiar with those other portions of Torah, you'll be missing out on the important dimension of what the Rebbe is actually saying. So the concept in this shiur is to look a bit further into the Brokerage that the Rebbe quotes in order to understand those sources better, and thereby understand the Rebbe's words better. And I chose Shailos and Shuvas specifically because even if you have a shiur in Gemara, even Gemara Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, we know that Rambam is developed based on the Gemara, Shulchan Aruch developed from the Rambam, but you can still be missing out on this entire other dimension, which is the literature of Shailos and Shuvas. Shailos and Shuvas, by their very nature, don't go through topics systematically. Each Shailos has its own question and its own answer. And in a Shailos Shuvah, you take a topic and you analyze it from all sides. Sometimes you can have some surprising conclusions or chidushim in halacha that you'd never reach going straight through Gemara, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, and Farshim. So Shailos Shuvas are like a unique intersection between interesting halachic topics. It also is a reflection of what life was like when those Shailos and Shuvas were written, so there's a certain historic dimension. And in this year, we're also connecting that with what the Rebbe says in his sikhs. So, of course, try to choose some more fascinating topics, so that explains, I think, all portions of the name of the shiur. So now we can approach the topics themselves. I chose 3 topics, and since there's currently the project to put the sikhs, where we're going through Midbar Chelik Ches, and now Dvarim Chelik Tes. So it occurred to me I'll focus on sikhs from these halakim that are being learned or were learned in this project. That's how I chose these 3 topics. I'm going to start with a topic in a sikha that we're going to learn next week. Sikha of Ekev Beis in Chelik Tes. In this sikha, the Rebbe is talking about Pasuk in Ekev. The Rebbe says, Kol HaMitzvah, Asher Neichem Mitzadcha Hayom Tishkur Lasois, L'man Yirishtem Esol Eretz Yivosem Yirishtem Esol. So doing the mitzvahs, and then you keep the mitzvahs, you end up entering Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi says, what's Kol HaMitzvah? This term Kol HaMitzvah, Rashi says, either it's Kipshutai, literally, whatever that means, and then there's a Medrash Haggadah. The Medrash Haggadah says, if you started a mitzvah, you should finish it. You should complete it, because the mitzvah the credit is always given Al Shem HaDoimer, the one who finishes it. It says with Yosef, Asher Helu B'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim. The Yidden brought the bones of Yosef up from Mitzrayim. B'nei Yisrael wasn't a Moshe. Moshe, he was his own personal project. Moshe wasn't able to actually bring it to Kfura and Shem. The Yidden did. So the Yidden completed the mitzvah. Niknas Al Shema. This is all Rashi on the words Kol HaMitzvah. The Rebbe asks, what's bothering Rashi here? What's Rashi explaining? So the Rebbe explains that the question was that it sounds like if you call HaMitzvah, if you do all the mitzvahs, then The question is, we're not doing all the mitzvahs right now, we're doing some mitzvahs. So in response to that, Rashi's answering either kipshut, right? Literally, whatever, all the mitzvahs that you're doing, those mitzvahs. Or there's this other idea, this medrash. The idea here is, that explains it, isn't it? Because they were doing mitzvahs for the last 40 years, but most of the people who were doing mitzvahs for the last 40 years already passed away, right? Everyone had to die in the middle over a certain age. After these people who survived the last year, we're about to go in, they get the credit for all the mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs that were done for the last 40 years. That all accumulates as a merit for them to cost them Yiddish mitzvahs. So that's what Rashi is trying to say here with the idea of getting the credit. End of the Sikha, the Rebbe, this is of course very appropriate. Now, the Mashiach, we're the ones bringing the Geula, even though we're just at the culmination, the completion, but we'll get the credit. Of course, also a practical area that when you start a project, it's important to finish it. Anyway, so among the things that Rebbe says is that the chiddush here is that even when the person who started the mitzvah, like Moshe in the case of his, the only reason why Moshe didn't complete his mission wasn't his fault. Hashem didn't let him. It was an onus. And even when the people who do finish it were actually not that interested in this whole project, this whole enterprise to begin with, that's how the Rebbe said it, that when Moshe was collecting Yosef's remains, the other Yidden weren't interested. Still, the rule still applies. So the same thing translates into here. The Yidden are going to Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't matter what they did before, how they felt about it before. It doesn't matter. If you're doing the mitzvahs now, you get all the credits and you can enter Eretz Yisrael. So Mara 42, the Rebbe points out, this is actually not so simple. Because the Shailos Shav Yaakov seemingly says something else. So we're going to focus now on this. Shailos Shav Yaakov. First of all, what is Shailos Shav Yaakov? So the author is Yaakov Katz. He passed away in the year Tufkuf Beis, 1742. So around the time of the Shem Tov, for historical reference, he was a Rabbi in Koblenz in Germany, and then later in Frankfurt. And he's the author of the Sefer, which was printed by his children a short while after he passed away. I've seen just stylistic point. I've seen people refer to it as Shav Yaakov. This is just how you instinctively read it, but seemingly, especially if it's a pasuk, it's pretty clearly that it's Shav Yaakov. So why is the Shav Yaakov talking about this issue? What's the halachic issue here? So let's take a look. The Shaila is as follows: Reuven and Shimon made a shidduch. The son of Reuven with the daughter of Shimon. Now the shidduch was brought about. It was brought to fruition by Levi and Yehuda. We're using these names. Of course, we're not saying the actual names. However, God and Usher come along and say, "Hey, we were actually first. This was actually our idea. We suggested it first." So they did an investigation, and Reuven, the father, says, "Yeah, it's true. They're the first ones that came to me with this idea." Shimon, the father of the Kala, says, "First of all, I'm not sure if they were the very first, because actually a bunch of people came to me with this idea. So I don't know if they were actually the first. But anyway, I do remember that they came to me, and I told them that I'm not interested. Because I'm looking for a Baal Torah." That was the term he used. I'm looking for someone a little more scholarly, learning Torah, discussing unsaid, but clearly he's not on the level that Shimon was interested in. And he told them not to come back, not to bother. And in fact, they never came back. They gave up. But more than half a year later, Levi and Yehuda showed up. And there they already brought more experience and shatanim to the task, and they were trying to convince them. But no, things have changed. The situation really is a great shidduch for you. Even though he wanted a Baal Torah, still he wasn't convinced. So they didn't take no for an answer. They went to his family and put pressure on his family, and especially with Shimon's father. It says, they were going at it non-stop until they persuaded everyone around him, especially his father. And at this point, Shimon realizes that he's been, he can't say no to everybody. So this is all orchestrated by Levi and Yehuda. And Shimon is saying all this, it's clear that he's not trying to, cheat, cut an usher out of the portion. He's being very, it's meaningless here. He's just saying what happened. So Levi and Yehuda say, pretty clear that we're the ones that made this happen. We're the Goyim, right? So we're for sure the Goyim. Everyone agrees that we made it finalized. These other people are a suffix maschilim, or maybe they started one side, So in such a case, the rule should be that we go with the Vadai. In the case of this in Gemara, Sofik v'Yavim. You have a grandfather, you have two sons, one of them dies, and that person's wife goes and gets married too soon, and she has a child. Now we're not sure whose child is born Vikashras, but we don't know who the father is. So he's a Suffolk grandchild, and then there's the Yavam, the other brother, the other son. So now there's a question mark grandchild and a for sure son. Allah is the Yavam gets the Yerusha, the Suffolk doesn't get anything. So this might be another variation of Suffolk the Yavam. They also said that why should we even count these people as the ones who are the maschilim? They started this off. They gotta know. Are you gonna say, "Call me Shraga, Chayesh Ben, Zayesh Bach"? He's talking to you. You say, "Oh, you have a son that who iterates the call." Versus says, "No, that's totally a bad idea." You're gonna say that this person, every time it happens, that you're a maskil and shiller. But the other guys, they said, "Hey, this is in a Cheshmishka. That's pretty similar to what happened here." In Cheshmishka, it says if Reuben has a house to sell, and Shimon comes as a broker, as a sarcer, and says, "Where did you sell it to Levi?" Reuben says, "No, Levi, I can't do business with Levi. We're enemies." And then he turns around and he sells it to Levi directly or through someone else. So you can't cheat Shimon with Shimon's idea. You can't cheat Shimon out of his sarcerus. Well, they say the Ramah is according to the Rosh that you have to pay Shimon. This is his idea. The Shadchan is more or less the same thing as the sarcer. You're broken. You're middle. You're trying to bring two parties together. So that was their argument. You should get paid. So the response to that was, if you look in the marker, the Ramah, if you look at the actual case, it's talking about where Reuben was being misleading. He didn't want to pay Shimon his fee as a broker. So he lied to him and fled him and said, no, it's not going to work. And then once he thought he had Shimon off his back, then he went out and did it himself. Because it's most, so therefore Shimon gets the credit. So that's why Shimon gets the money. But here, there was no Ramos. Shimon, the father, genuinely was uninterested at that time. And it's a ma'aseh b'chol yom that, first you say no, you don't want to sell something for a certain price, and then you finally break and you sell it for that. But that's different. That you change your mind later. And anyway, another argument was the people that cleared the shidduch and said, even if we do count, let's say they truly, genuinely got this ball rolling. So in Germany, at the time, the minute was that the person who begins the shidduch is just get a third of the shidduch. Even though in Poland, the minute in some places was that they got half, we should follow our minute. We're in Germany, and even in Poland, there are places where they divide the money into three portions for the Maschil, the Amtsoy, and the Goyim. So, according to our math, they said these guys are the Mitzvah. Only the father of the Chassan acknowledges them as the ones who suggested it. So they should get a Chati Shlish, they should get a sixth, half a third at most, even if we accept their argument. And now we get to the main point as to why we're getting into this. What are even if they were true Maschilim for real, and it was from both sides, they still don't really deserve a third. Why? Brought this Gemara, it's originally more straight to the Baratsky series, and it says that the Israel got the credit in the end because they were the ones who completed it, and they were, and those arguing here, they added a deal. So look at the pasuk. The pasuk doesn't say Bnei Israel shehel midbar. It doesn't say it truthfully that the Yidden were the ones who brought it from the midbar to Eretz Yisrael. It says they brought it to Eretz Yisrael, me'eretz Mitzrayim. So we're not just giving them, we're not just focusing on their part and giving the credit for the part that they did. We're literally taking away Moshe's credit. We're literally taking the thing that Moshe did and giving that credit to Bnei Yisrael as if Bnei Yisrael are taking it out. Me'eretz Mitzrayim. So you see that the pshat here is that the Goymer, what's Nikkel, Shema Goymer, it doesn't just mean you get credit for the part that you did. It means you get the whole credit. You get the part that the person who started it did. So Abazai, if you didn't finish the shidduch, then you don't count as anything in the argument. You got a little schar. It says Misha gets a little schar. So you know what? We'll say that's about a fifth and sixth, same amount. Don't tell me they say that that's mitzvah. This is money, because the Gemara doesn't say kol oisim mitzvah. The Gemara says kol oisim dover. So, and anyway, what's the difference? Logic. It's logic. That was the question that the Shav Yaakov was asking. So the Shav Yaakov answers that what he's familiar with, where he comes from, and where he lives now, that if you suggest the shidduch, you're the master, you get it. And in this case, if it's only the father of the chassan who's acknowledging them, so half a third, But as to this whole question as to who actually, we're not sure who gets the credit, he said his opinion is, it's very possible in this in other cases, he says, that it all depends if you follow the logic. If the person who suggested it really got the ball rolling, just that he couldn't finish it off, he couldn't make it finalize it, others have to finalize it. So for example, come with a good idea for a shidduch, if the person, one of the parties of the shidduch who likes the idea, feels that you're not the person to represent them with the other party. They feel like they need to get a different shadchan who will do a better job facing the second party. So they absolutely respect your suggestion. They're very grateful. It was your idea, but they just don't think that you are the one to finalize it. So in that case, it's still pretty clear that the person who suggested it, if not for them, nothing might have happened. So then that's when you should get your portion according to the minute. But if the ones who finalized it came up with the idea themselves, and in fact, they thought they were first, all they knew. So in K and Hamas, we also should do a type the person who began to do anything really beneficial here. And this is what it seems like in this case, right? Because they came to him and the guy said, no, I don't like your idea. And would have ended with that. The other shadchanim came on their own. They didn't know about this first guy. So why should we give the person who suggested it first? What do they do? Why are we paying them? What are we paying them for? Again, if father of the college did like the first guy, but for some reason he couldn't finish it off, let's say he deserves something. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to finish it themselves without him beginning it. But here he said no, and still trickery here, and he wasn't being misleading. So how did they actually help? What did they actually contribute? Based on this, the Shav Yaakov wants to explain the Gemara with Moshe and Yisrael because there's a kasha in the first there's a medrash that says Mizmashir Chanukas Habayis for David. David built the Beis Hamikdash. Medrash says David built the Beis Hamikdash. Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash. So the medrash says Hashem told him because you really wanted to build it, so even though Shlomo finished it, we're going to give you the credit. Literally the opposite of this Gemara, seemingly. So what's going on? How do we know that David actually? He began building it. It says he built Yisrael, he was digging, and then he wasn't able to finish it by Ines. Hashem wouldn't let him, just like Moshe. So how did we arrive at such opposite Ramar Chazal? So he says, when it comes to Moshe and the Yidden, really it was the Yidden's job, because Yosef made everyone swear, made the Shvatim swear, so it was everyone's job. Moshe just got ahead of everyone, he did first, and they let him, it says, they let him. It's appropriate that Moshe should be the one above. So that means that in this case, if not for Moshe, it all still would have happened. Moshe was the one who did it, but you can't give him the credit as to, he made it happen. So in the case where he didn't really make it happen, and he didn't finish it, and the others finished it, so then they get the credit. Like in the case of the shidduch. Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash, who's to say we have no way of knowing if David HaMelech had this idea on his own? It didn't come from anywhere. David had a heritage. He built his palace, and he said, I'm living in a beautiful palace, and the Aaron is in a tent. It was his own heritage. Not for David. Who knows of any other king or how long would it take for someone else to do it? Shalom didn't think of it. So he actually came up with this idea. This was his project. Hashem didn't let him finish it. So that means in that case, David is really the main party here. So it's named after him. So the Rebbe is meramis to all this very good. Just look in the Ha'ara. Rebbe says, Shav Yaakov says that Zesh and Niklas al Sheikh Goimra, in the person who finalized the credit, it's only if he would have also been maschal, not from the other person getting there first. Like Altamus Yosef, when the Yidden referred to this, would have brought him up. It doesn't cite that. They said, okay, well, let Moshe do. But if the maschal is the one who initiated it and no one else was, then he gets the credit. And based on this, it explains the steer. So the Rebbe says just that. You read the Ha'ara, you have no idea what the background is, where the Shraga is coming from. Now, the problem here is that it happens to be opposite. Rebbe's point in the Sichel was that Chiddush and Hashem Goyma is that even if you totally were not interested, and you just happened to round it in your lap, you had the chance to finish it, you still got the credit. So the Rebbe's asking, Shav Yaakov seems to be advancing a different principle here. So the Rebbe answers, as he often does in these types of sichas, that this sicha we're following Shitas Rashi, Rashi al Torah, from Rashi al Torah. We don't see this idea that the others could have done it. So from Rashi here, we're going to go from the Sukkah. We're going to say that Rashi is saying that you get the credit no matter what, even if the person who finished it could have started, the dafka didn't start, it doesn't matter. That's one example. That was the first. Now we're going to move on to the second time. Going back to Midbar Balak base. So the Rebbe is explaining the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, and as the Rebbe says, it's Hilchos Melech HaMashiach. At the end of Perek Yud, where it says that you don't believe in Mashiach, you're a kafir. And the Rambam has all our Arichos explained from the Parsha, the story of Bilam. And the Rebbe and the Shraga is trying to explain the deeper significance, the meaning of this halacha, what the Rambam is trying to accomplish here, quoting from Bilam at length. So, towards the beginning of the Sikha, the Rebbe says in the Sikha that one could say that what the pasuk from Bilam are adding over the pasuk that already says Sham Hashem Yikach Shmuscha. We say that's referring to the Gula. So, what's the story of Bilam adding? So, the Rebbe says one could say that the Sham Hashem Yikach just says Hashem, doesn't mention Mashiach. And Bilam, whatever the drasha is, from Bilam, Yudarshan, that's referring to Melech HaMashiach specifically. And then it continues to say, but it still doesn't explain the entire length of the Rambam. That's one of the points that it makes. In R17, the Rebbe says, Lahar from Rashi Sanhedrin, famous Gemara, Rabbi Hill said, Ela HaMashiach Yisrael. There's no Mashiach. So Rashi says, what does Hill mean? Hill means there's no person who's Mashiach. Hashem. It's not denying the whole, we're just denying the person part that it says Hashem will be Yimlich Ba'atzmi. The Rebbe says, see Shut Chasam Sefer, the end of Yeridea. And so let's get into that now. The Rebbe is also decided to some Sefer over there a few more times in the Sikha. We'll get back to that at the end. Let's take a look at the Chassam Sefer because it's also an interesting topic. I hope I don't have to introduce the Chassam Sefer too much. He was born in Frankfurt, Germany. He became a Rav in Preshburg, Bratislava, which was then in Hungary. He passed away in the year 1839. And is considered like all the Rabbanim in Hungary that came after him, all his Talmidim, all his influence. It's considered like the Rash Bahag of Hungary, and his influence is felt and acknowledged still today. Chabad were also very respectful. Tzedek Tzedek already quoted him with tremendous respect, and seems to Rebbe too. So in Shuv Chassam Sefer Chelik Beis Yered Beis Simon Shinnon involved. You find the following Shuvah. Now it's not, you don't have the name to address to. I didn't see that anyone explained what the background was. But some Sefer says this is about the debate if there are 13 ikrim, or if there are 13 principles of belief in Judaism, or there are only 3, which is the opinion of Yosef Halbach. Now, just to give a little background here, what we're talking about. So, of course, in Judaism, there are mitzvahs, things you have to do, and there's one of the things you have to believe. Now, if you look at the Torah, you don't necessarily see that many things. Shema Yisrael, but it's not really spelled out very much. Look in Chazal and Sanhedrin. So there are a number of things Chazal listed that say you have to believe in the Torah, you're considered Apatheus. But in the Gemara, and even for some Rishonim, there still wasn't such a clear seder as to what do we believe and why. The Rambam, and possibly because the Rambam was coming from a bit of a philosophical background, and his approach was based on logic, everything has to be built logically. So the Rambam came along and made clear seder. Here are the 13 things. The Rambam was the first one to do this. These are the 13 things you must believe, and he explained that's not just here's 13 things you have to believe. The reason why you have to believe these 13 things is because the whole religion, Judaism, is based on these 13 things. If you take away any of these 13, then the Yiddishkeit sort of falls apart. That's why the Gemalikim are so important right there now. So there came other Rishonim from this school of thought, philosophy, and they continue discussing this. And maybe the most famous one is Yosef Halbach. He wrote a whole Sefer HaIkrim, and the major takeaway is that he came to the conclusion that you don't have to have 13, you can bring it down to 3. The 3 are Hashem exists, Mount Torah, and reward and punishment. And that's all you need for Judaism to work. Notably, he does not list Mashiach. That's one of the things that gets cut from the list. But this is the minimum, so to speak. The discussion, the debate continued generations after that, to a certain extent till today. What do you have to believe and why? So that's the background here. So someone's reaching out to some Sefer to hear his take, his opinion. So some Sefer says, he takes the following position, which others have taken as well. He says, I don't understand what difference any of this makes. 13, 3, it's all just semantics here, the title only. Because he says, Das, Hamikubalam, according to the Quran, there is no ikr, because even the fights, even the little lines in the Torah, everything's an ikr. How can you even distinguish? Is there a part of the Torah you don't have to accept? You have to accept everything. It's interesting, even though some Sefer's attitude relationship to Kabbalah is complex, sometimes he dismisses it, but here he's adopting an approach which he himself says is not Kabbalah, which is that you have to believe everything. So what's an ikr? So seemingly one could say that this is coming also from like a general kind of like an anti-logic stance. Meaning, why are you trying to build and say this is the foundation? We accept the whole Torah without question. No foundations. There's no significance. Now, in Chabad, we're always something of the mutzah in the middle. So we're not testing the foundations of Torah according to logic, but we also do try to give a logical explanation to things, something that stimulates your mind, unlike other Haredi groups that might still today have the position that we really shouldn't be talking or thinking about it that much. Don't think about it. So, and we're going to get back to what the Rebbe has to say about this from the end of this. So that's some say out of the gate, saying I take the position of what are ikram anyway. Then he points out, he says, my Talmud, this is from Maharam Ash, there's Rab, one of the big Talmidim, some Sefer, when we're hungry, past 1852. It says in the Shalah, there's Tfilas Rav Tavyumi that seems to mention Yosher Ikram Shleish Esrei. Look in the Shalah, so it says in the Shalah, Tzasi Tfila, I found an old Tfila. You said this B'Shem Tavyumi from someone by the name of Tavyumi. This is how it goes. Yasel Fanacha, Hashem HaMakodesh, Shleish Esrei, Aman Avram Yitzchak Harishayim V'Risa Shleish Esrei, Aman Yaakov Ishtam Tzatzav Shleish Esrei, Tzochanemi, Emekaymi Seidasacha Hadreshes, the Migdash Shleish Esrei, Ubercheni Ledavik, the Shomreni Mikra, the Yimnu Mimeni, Midesacha HaShleish Esrei, V'Har Panacha Elai V'Haitzi, Sichli Lepoyel, Torah, the Tzochanemi Beidacha B'Shem, and Yosher Ikram Shleish Esrei. So finds that there's some kind of each line ends with 13. Rish Shleish Esrei, Tzitzayim Shleish Esrei, Midrash Shleish Esrei, Ikram Shleish Esrei. So Chazam Sefer says it seems that we're saying that Rav Tavyumi, the Amayra, already wrote a tefillah with references to Yidkim Ikram. So Chazam Sefer, clearly that's how Chazam Sefer is understanding it, that the Shalah is referring to Rav Tavyumi, which is the name we know from the Gemara. So first of all, there are those who point out there's another Chazam Sefer about this directly to this Talmud who brought it up to him many years earlier, and in that Shuvah, the Chazam Sefer actually rejected it. He said, "Oh, you quoted this Tavyumi. Tavyumi was not referring to Yidkim Ikram because we know that Adam was the first one. If you don't think Ikram, so whatever Tavyumi was referring to must have been something else." That was actually how the Chazam Sefer responded when they did came up. For some reason, 25 years later or so, Chazam Sefer is not mentioning his rejection. He's just like, "Oh, my Talmud pointed out that there's a tefillah of Tavyumi with Yidkim Ikram." Now, another point is that the Shalah didn't say Rabbi. The Shalah just said Tavyumi. And already, not long after the Chazam Sefer was printed, there already goes to say it might be someone else entirely. Someone who lived in the 1400s. His name was Yom Tov Lippman Milhuisen, and he wrote anti-Christian polemics, etc. And he used to sign his name, his nickname, he used to sign himself as Tavyumi, Yoim Taiv, Tavyumi, it's all Lippman, also means that they all mean the same thing. And in fact, as time went on, in the last 50 years, they actually found manuscripts of the Lippman Milhuisen's writings, and they actually found a tefillah that he wrote, and it ends off with this Yiratzin. So the whole thing is not referring to Tavyumi at all, as far as we know. And the Yom Tov Lippman was, of course, very aware, familiar with Rambam's teachings. Anyway, so some Sefer says maybe there's an earlier source for Ikram, but he says I cannot accept specifically. She called out this specific in particular. She says I cannot believe that the Geula could possibly be an Ikar in our religion. So it wasn't Ikar. An Ikar is that if Ikar falls, if the foundation falls, then as the religion, is Yiddishkeit. He says I can't believe that we would say that about the Geula. Let's say if Chas v'Shalom, our sins cause, and Hashem rejects us eternally, which actually happened a little bit. Because as Rebbe says, the Asaras Hashvatim and the 12 Shvatim, according to Rebbe, are out. They're not coming back. So it's not so far-fetched. So, because of that, they can say, oh, there's no more Geula for us in Yiddishkeit. So therefore, we pray to come out Shai, and everything, whatever you want, Yiddishkeit doesn't exist anymore. Could you change even a Kaitzi Shal Yud, even a Rabbanan? We're not serving Hashem, we're doing what Hashem wants. So, I'll call upon him, I'll call him, no matter what. We're Hashem's servants, we have to do what he wants. So why is this in your side? Why is this in Yiddish? Why would we call this an Yiddish? I've heard they quote a word distributed to some sefer. I don't know if there's another marker for it. It's really based on this shuvah. Some sefer said it comes the end of the Elach HaShishi, which is supposed to be the deadline, which is some discussion for Mashiach. Even if the deadline comes and we don't see Mashiach, we still have to wake up the next morning and put on our house. It's still on. I think the Wakam likes to quote it, likes to reject it. But I don't know if it's a separate void or it's really based on the shuvah, which is that's what some sefer is saying. Why would that affect Yiddishkeit? So why do we believe in the Geula? The reason why we believe in the Geula is simply because we believe everything. Back to this point, we do everything in Torah and Nevi'im. And it says there, we have a Geula, Tzavim, Hazinu, Nevi'im. So that's why if you express doubt about the Geula, you didn't pay for it. That's why. And then he gets to the point, which we haven't quoted, and it says Rebbe in Gemara, in Mashiach Yisrael, doesn't mean that Rebbe actually rejected the Geula, which would be a proof at all. Maybe we don't think it at all. No, Rashi said it means just with Mashiach, with Hashem. It must be the Chasam Sefer, because Gemara says, the more proofs of Rebbe say, it says, Ani Varech Ma'achamar. So we see that there's a Mashiach. Which, by the way, some Sefer says you could reject that raya, because maybe it's referring to Nehemiah. Some say it's referring to Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the only Varech Ma'achamar. Why did the Gemara say, there's a pasuk in Zechariah, Yetzu Mayim Chayim, Beis Hashem, Mayim Beis Hashem Yetzik, which Ibn Ezra brings as a proof. Must be, because he never said there's no Geula. Yet Mayim Chayim Beis Hashem, only proves there's a Geula. It's nothing about Mashiach in that pasuk. The Gemara is trying to prove that there's a Mashiach. Only Mayim Chayim Beis Hashem. No one is doubting that. No one's allowed to call that into question. Even that Torah is not like the building. This is what they're going to quote in the Sikh of Aimer. In Mashiach, the Kimli, can have hell if you say, I don't like a bill. They will kafir the Klal HaTorah, because in Torah we say, Achirav Lahatis, and the Roy rejected it. So if you reject that, you're essentially rejecting the whole Torah, just like you can pick and choose Tanoim's opinion for halacha. And if you follow the lezer, you cut wood, Torah Mila, not the Mila itself. If you do it on Shabbos, Be'edim Asirah, suckle, you got to feel it. You can't just pick and choose. You can't say Kimli. So again, he concludes that the Geula will be a Mashiach, he never Iker. I don't see why this is an Iker. Just can continue just fine without it, but you can't be kafir in it because it's in the Torah. And the Chasam Sefer makes an additional point, which is also interesting about why we believe in Torah and how we believe in Torah. He says, the only thing in Torah that we didn't witness is the story of Bilam. Everything else, all Yetzias Mitzrayim, we were all participants. Except maybe Moshe's children if Yisro came off the mountain Torah. Otherwise, basically everyone. We have the rule, and they get their parents to lie to their children. So it's like we all saw it. What about the stories before? Even Chiddush, the stories of Adam Rishon saw it all. He spoke to Shem ben Noach. Shem was already born when Adam was alive. So he told it all to Shem. Shem told it all to Yaakov. Yaakov told it to his children. So it's also like it's as if it happened before our eyes. So anyone who would try to come and change mitzvahs, we'd laugh him out, right away. Crazy. We know exactly. We've been doing it the same way this entire time. The only part of Torah that's different is Parshas Bilam. Who told us what Melech Noah was doing and some Kaisim came to his land? It's a whole story that's totally out of character with the rest of Torah. Who would have known that building the spacious, he wanted a curse, came up rough? Who was there? Who was the witness? Even if they're standing and they're looking down, they could see the end. How people in the midbar know that someone's looking at them from the top of the mountain and what they're trying to do? Even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know. Hashem told them, and Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it down. And yet, the Navi says, remember what God did? So, some Sefer says, if you believe in the whole Torah, you just say, look, the part of Torah I have an issue with is Parshas Bilam. I believe in Torah because we have a tradition, we've been passing it on to follow the son, not itself. Parshas Bilam, I don't know why I should believe that. So even if you're kaifer in that, some Sefer says, like you're kaifer in Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Does that mean that Parshas Bilam is an ikar? That without Parshas Bilam, the Torah falls apart? No. Unless you say like the Rambam, maybe that Mashiach comes from Parshas Bilam, but that's not what some Sefer say. So still, if you're kaifer in this, you're kaifer in the ikar. So Al Shekin, the Gula Acharayna, which is part of the regular teachings, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. That's the some Sefer is Shuvah. That's what the Rebbe is quoting in short about this idea that if you were kaifer in, even if you hold like Rebbe held, that there is a goal, there's no Mashiach, even that's a kaifer. Then at the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe, one of the later artists, actually addresses the first point of some Sefer. The Rebbe explained in the Sikha that the whole part of the Ram break it out is to explain that the whole part of Mashiach is that this is a shleimus HaTorah. All these 2,000 years of this part, etc. We're not going to kind the Torah properly and listen out on such large portions of the Torah. Mashiach comes, now everything properly. That's on the basic level. That's the idea of Mashiach. And that's what the Ram is explaining to break it off. So it says, based on this, we can explain why Mashiach is one of the Ikrim. That was the sign to the Abarbanel. There's another one of the Rishayim who discussed this issue. That was the time of some Sefer. And it's not just because it's clearly in the Torah and the Rebbe and the Ksuvim, it's giving Kaifer and Torah and Rebbe and Ksuvim, but because it's actually gay on the Shleim of Gather Torah. Some Sefer says, why do I need the Gula for the Torah? The Torah exists without the Rebbe. Says no. Actually, according to your logic, the Torah doesn't exist properly and fully without the Gula. We need the Gula in order to be kind of the Torah with Shleimus. So that is a very good reason to put the Gula on the list of Ikrim. There's something special and different, not just any other pasuk in the Torah, but this is the Shleimus HaTorah. Of course, there's a lot more to say, but we're just touching on these topics. That was the second sentence. Now moving on to the third. So moving back to Chukas, Chelik of Chukas Aleph. So in the middle of the Sikh, the Rebbe makes the following points. It says in the Medrash that Moshe couldn't understand how does Tara for Tumas Meis work. So what was bothering Moshe so much? The explanation is that as long as there's an neshama in the Guf, so the neshama can bring the Tara. Even if there's an element of Tumah here, the neshama is connected to the Tara, and that's how the Tara is present. But when you have Tumas Meis and the neshama leaves the Guf, how can you have Tara here? That was the vexation. So the answer is, it's very stukas HaTorah. Chayach HaTorah is able to leave a mark in the body. Even when the neshama leaves, there's the Tara that comes from this Torah. So the Rebbe says in the Sikha that could be this is one of the reasons the Pneumius, I'm a Chazal, tzadikim eino metamen. That tzadikim are not metamen. Plus the Ritzias of the Guf Tzaddik, here's his neshama. His whole life is his neshama. Luna, Ava, Yira. That is where that's where his Guf gets his sustenance from. So even when the neshama leaves, so there it's a lot more obvious and understandable that the neshama leaves a mark, so that would be the reason why Eino Metamen. On R55, the Rebbe's Mitzayin is, of course, the actual halachic discussion. Do we treat the Kavarim of Tzadikim differently and Bilach Pehanim to go to the Kavarim of Tzadikim? So one of the Makayas the Rebbe is Mitzayin to is Shuk Minchas HaLazar. Also fairly well known, I would think. Chaim HaLazar Shapiro passed away in 1937. Was the Rav Munkach, the Rebbe Munkach, and a very chashuv individual in his time, the Kanoi. The Rebbe was very fond of his writings. So in Shut Minchas HaLazar, Chelik Gimel Siman Samach Dalet, Minchas HaLazar writes, you asked me, there's a halacha in Tvur Shulchan Aruch, today is Siman Shinai Dalet, it says in Shulchan Aruch, Nasi Akol Metamen. Everyone can become Tameh when a Nasi passes away. And the person asked that, hey, we had a whole discussion of Kibbutz Tzadikim. If they are Matama, they're not Matama, and the halacha is that they're not Matama. So why is he just saying Shulchan Aruch straight up that you do Matama to a Nasi? Seemingly the Shulchan Aruch is saying Kibbutz Tzadikim are not Matama. Sounds like it's Noeg was my name. In fact, elsewhere there's a discussion of Shulchan Aruch. There is a Din Nasi now. where there isn't. We're not talking about the covenant, certainly the covenant is mentioned in the Gemara and Rambam, but that maybe doesn't apply now. Maybe other things not. So the Minchas Lazar says is a bach that there's a traces in Sukkot that quotes from Chaim Kain. The Chaim Kain says, if I was there when Rabbi Tam would have passed away, I would have been a Talmud to him. So it sounds like, according to this opinion, every Gadol Hadar would have been a Talmud to them. However, in Hagoyes Maimoni says, I'm not sure. Is a Gadol Hadar like a Nasi or not? And therefore, the Bach says, we are machma like Hagoyes Maimoni. Chumrah and Tumah for Kana. And the Bach says, actually, put nice to the fact that the Station of Shulchan Aruch didn't bring this kind of Nasi on the Talmud. So it sounds like, according to the Machaber, we don't have this din nowadays. Because a Gadol Hadar is not like a Nasi. The Minchas Lazar says, when the first should come to the Bach and say, what are you talking about? It actually is literally right there in Shulchan Aruch. It says in Shulchan Aruch, Nasi, have Kroma Talmud. So it seemed to be an oversight by the Bach. And the Spear HaGraver, from the Yerushalmi, by Rebbe, after Rebbe passed away, they said, no kahuna. And look in the Yerushalmi says they treated it like a mace mitzvah. Mace mitzvah is literally known to bury the mace mitzvah. The kohen is mitzvah the mace mitzvah. So when it's the nasi, so then he needs everyone to be mitzvah to him. That's what he needs. Right? If you need two people to help the mace mitzvah, you need two people, you need three people. So the nasi needs everybody. So it's the mace mitzvah. So mace mitzvah is still a thing nowadays. That halacha didn't change, and so that would explain why this halacha is still relevant now. We treat a gadol, if we are to accept that we treat a gadol there like a nasi, but the din mace mitzvah would still apply.
What's the tension between tzaddikim and the nasi passing away?
So then he makes the point. The assumption behind your question is wrong. There's no shaykhs here between this question of kibbutz tzaddikim. We're not even talking about kvarim. We're talking about burying. Oh, when the person passes away, then everyone has to be started in the kfura. Once the kfura is over, then the kfura is over. So the two things have nothing to do with each other. What's the Walter's point in response to the question that seems to be confusing the two? However, there's still the question of wasn't he not sure if a gadol hadar has a din nasi? It's an actual discussion. Do we have a din nasi as man as or not? But we see the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch did bring this halacha, and we know the Shulchan Aruch only brings halachas that are relevant now. And in fact, we see there are other cases where literal halachas are proven from the fact that the Mechaber did bring something, didn't bring something. We're going to go through the issue. So why did the Mechaber bring it? Clearly, the Mechaber does hold that a gadol hadar who passes away now has the same thing as the nasi. That's where it's in Shulchan Aruch. So that would be a very good proof, unlike the Bach says that we were actually machmer, like the very smart. We know, so we're actually passing like that. Now, the Shailos in the Bach do say that no one seems to be applying this halacha in the last many hundred years. No kfura for any gadol in the last 100 years. Anyone announced that the Harim should be the Talmud. So the Minchas Lazar says, because it's become such a widespread heter, so then it's going to get abused. Every Talmud Chacham, or even a rabbi, who wasn't really a Talmud Chacham, everyone's going to come and say, his friends, the paying him, they're going to say, oh, it was the Gadol Hadar. The world we live in, a bit of shakar. So they're going to be a Talmud, and it's not a din based mitzvah. You have to follow the halacha, you have to know if it applies here or not. And even they, even they know he's not really what they're saying he is. But when you're ace chimon, when you're all heated up, so the magzim exaggerates. So better to keep this halacha quiet and not to use it even when you should. That way it won't be abused. Later on, the Minchas also says, what about the Arizal? It says that, right, so Yitzchak HaKayin told me, he was a Talmud of the Arizal. I believe Chaim Vital was not there when the Arizal passed away, and writing when others were present told him. Arizal, before he passed away, said, Kum say, Mahir Nizak, Yalta Kayin, Yikias Mani. Arizal said, step out right now, you're a Kayin, isn't the Arizal the greatest? And yet he's telling his Talmud the Kayin to leave. We just said that Pidin real din is that the Talmidim the Kabbalah Torah could be Matama. So Minchas says this is not a question because there is also big enough. So even when he was passing away, he wasn't going to say, I have a din, Kabbalah. We see from the stories how he was a big honor. And maybe the Rizal disagreed with the Mechaber. He shouldn't be Machmir when it comes to or maybe the Rizal was concerned about the point that I just raised. That it's clear of control. He started trying to everybody. Starts the Rizal, and who knows where it ends. Maybe that's why. But that's the Rizal's reasoning. We have the Shulchan Aruch is Allah Sukkah, so no one can say that it's usher. But we still shouldn't go around saying that it's mutter for the reason for this. That's what the Minchas are saying. That's the Rizal maybe subscribed to more machmer opinion for Rizal that fell mamish. But he's saying halacha. You cannot say the halacha is unlike the halacha is like the mechaber, but we shouldn't go around it. But what about kibbutz tzadikim and Matana? Well, the famous raya that it's not shul halacha is the story of Master because Rabbi was being Messiah Ma'artel. That's the story. He saw the office and how they were lying in the Marsbach. Why was he doing it? He was going around marking Ma'aris when people were buried for the benefit of Kahana. So seems like we're saying that the Marsbach is Matama for Kahana, even though they're Kibbutz Tzadikim.
Even more so, they waking up every morning to daven.
Right, you're saying they even seem less mace-like than usual.
They wake up.
So that's the big raya. So actually, if you think about it, that's not such a good raya because it says in Saita that Chushim knocked off Esav's head. Esav's head rolled into Rosh Hashanah. So it could be the reason why Rabbi Noah was marking Rosh Hashanah is because Esav's head is there somewhere. It gets into the halachas of which part of the body is necessary, is sufficient to cause tumah, but it concludes that it would apply here if it's the head. And especially gets the whole discussion of how Esav had a din Yisrael Mumar, what was Esav's halachic status, and the Parshas Drachim, the Mishnah Melech says that from Avram and on, they don't have a din ben Nayach, so Esav would have a din Yisrael Mumar. Then he says, the Gemara actually sounds a bit like just the eyes from that. And the eyes themselves won't be B'tam, beat the whole skull, remember to be B'tam. So maybe my explanation doesn't work. By the way, that would fit nicely with Yosifon. Because in Yosifon, it has a lot more variations on the story. And it says there that Bnei Esav, after there was a big war between Esav and his children and Bnei Yaakov, which is not something very, but it's in Yosifon. So then Esav died in that war according to Yosifon, and they took his body home. It doesn't say in Yosifon that they took his headless body. So maybe if you want to put the two together, you have to say that he would have lost his eyes, but not his head. So you see the mention that his head wasn't missing. And the Minchas says, Sifon, it's his own question of how we relate to that sefer, its reliability, and all the fact that he was a traitor, he's on Titus' side. So how do we look? That's a whole discussion tonight. It's pretty apropos for the 9 days, but that's a whole different discussion. There's also a discussion today about the Hebrew work versus the Greek work. Esav? Interesting question. I don't know if I've seen it discussed. However, even if you're going to try to make that case about the eyes, but the Kabbalah, Rabbi Fano, etc., they seem to say clear that his whole hand is there, and that makes more sense in the Gemara as well. So it goes over the eyes and falls off, because it's Esav's head. But anyway, however, he says he was probably on the Talmud of the Shinover, Chaskel Havishtam, the son of the kind of sons, and the Shinover already passed into the Shabbat, as Kahanim can't go to Kibbutz Tzadikim, and the Shinover fought for this. He visited Israel and he fought for it there as well, for Arias. Then Minchas Elazar said, so Malacha, Minchas Elazar saying we passed in we don't have a time. This is actually, look at the stories of Arizal from Talmidim to be Mishtatayach on the Gemara of Tanai, and one of the Talmidim it says was a Yitzchak Kayan. So he sent that same Talmud that he told to leave. In other stories, he sent him to be Mishtatayach on the Gemara. And you can't say that he's just standing to the side. Ishtafchus, literal Ishtafchus, lie prostrate on the paver, and commune with the tzaddik there. So Elamai, really, Allah is that most outrageous wouldn't be an issue. People wouldn't be going up anyway. Elamai is a gzeira, we're not sure if it would be best, very like that. So maybe in a case of mitzvah, Ishtafchus, then we're making. etc., etc. That's part of that Minchas Elazar discussion. Now, the Rebbe is going to sign this Minchas Elazar in that Sikha. The Rebbe is also going to sign to the Shailos who developed Rebbe's brother. So, we'll just to conclude, we'll look at two letters to the Rebbe about this. They're cited in Shulchan Menachem and Kriyat Days. The Rebbe was asked, what do we say practically? So the Rebbe says, we know the letter of Rebbe's brother, Yanovich, that they took specific caution how they built the Tzir and how they developed Rebbe. It was very clear that they were taking into account the halachas of Tumah for Kehanim. That's in one letter. There was the whole Shiloh about this Manakura versus going later is its own discussion. There was referring here really to Lazar as well. And then there's another letter from the Rebbe Shailos, and the Rebbe says that this discussion, the comment talks about it. Everyone's machmer, and that includes Chabad, Mario, Yanovich, said they were very careful with the mechitza, and that's how the paper, the oil, the Rebbe spoke as well. That's why the oil, as we're familiar with today, is set up the way it is, where the Kehanim are not meant to come down on the way there, and not when they're there as well.